At the family reunion I funded, they handed out custom t-shirts to everyone. Mine read, "Biggest disappointment." I didn't argue. I just smiled, pulled out a thick stack of documents, ripped them cleanly in two, and walked out. An hour later, they finally realized what I had destroyed, and the phone calls started flooding in. I wish I could say it caught me off guard, that it hit me out of nowhere, but truthfully, it felt more like the last puzzle piece in a picture I'd been pretending wasn't real. I stood there holding the shirt, staring at those bold black words as if they'd been branded across my chest. Biggest disappointment. How thoughtful. My sister Sarah was already chuckling. "It's just a joke," she said, twirling her blonde hair around her finger the way she'd done since we were kids. From across the picnic table at Lakewood Resort, my brother Danny raised his Bud Light and shrugged. "Come on, Bella. It's kind of funny, right?" My parents? They stayed quiet at first. Then my mom gave a soft laugh like someone had just cracked an awkward joke at a church potluck. My dad shook his head and smiled, the kind of smile people give when someone trips on the sidewalk. I nodded once, then again slower. Right. Funny. I folded the shirt with care and placed it at the edge of my paper plate, next to my untouched barbecue pulled pork. Nobody noticed my hands trembling. Or maybe they did and simply didn't care. I don't know what I expected. I had paid for the whole thing, the venue, the catered southern feast, the travel expenses, even the matching shirts. That's the punchline, isn't it? They used my American Express to print that label. Hilarious. I spent months planning this weekend, booking the old lakeside cabin they always talked about so fondly in Tennessee. I thought naively, I guess, that maybe nostalgia would soften them, that maybe this time I'd feel like I belonged. Instead, I got a printed reminder of exactly where I stood in the Hamilton family tree. And the saddest part? I wasn't even mad. Just exhausted. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones and settles like concrete. I pushed back my folding chair and smiled. "Be right back," I said, and headed up the wooden steps to the guest room. Technically, it was my room since I'd rented the whole place for the weekend. I opened my designer luggage. The manila folder was right where I'd left it, thick, crisp, waiting. I had printed the documents on premium letterhead, something that felt meaningful, something they could frame. I'd even thought about bringing champagne to celebrate the news. Instead, I returned to the deck and stopped just behind my empty seat. No one noticed. They were too busy taking a group selfie in their brand new shirts, the Smoky Mountains perfectly framed behind them. Perfect. I slid the folder open, removed the papers, and started tearing them in half slowly, intentionally, one page at a time. Each rip echoed across the quiet lake like a gunshot. Sarah turned around first. "Wait, what is that?" Danny frowned, lowering his phone. "Is that a contract?" I said nothing. My dad rose halfway from his lawn chair. "Bella." I placed the shredded papers in front of my untouched plate, smiled again, this time with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "Enjoy the shirts." And I walked away. No yelling, no slamming doors, just the sound of my heels clicking on the old wooden deck, the creak of the screen door behind me, and the cool mountain air brushing my face. Like a quiet kind of freedom. I didn't even bother grabbing my jacket. I didn't need it. I was halfway to my BMW when the first call came in, then a second, then 3 more. Like a dam cracking open. I didn't answer. Not yet. Let them read what I destroyed first. Let them feel it. I sat in my car for 10 minutes before even turning the key, just staring at my hands on the steering wheel, still calm. Still too calm, like my body hadn't caught up with what had just happened. They laughed. That part kept looping in my head. My mom, my siblings, even my dad, like it was all so harmless, like calling me their biggest disappointment was just another cute little family quirk, right up there with Sarah's passive-aggressive Christmas cards and Danny's jokes about me being 32 and single. But it wasn't harmless. And it wasn't new. I could trace it back to age 9. That was the year Danny broke Mrs. Peterson's window with a baseball, and I got grounded for not stopping him. Sarah lied about failing her spelling test, and I got a lecture about being a bad influence. Every mistake in that house somehow had my name attached to it, even if I wasn't in the room. At 12, I remember getting a B- in algebra, my first. I cried, not because of the grade, but because I knew exactly what was coming. Dinner table sarcasm. Mom's dramatic sigh. Dad's quiet disappointment. Meanwhile, Danny could flunk an entire semester and still get extra allowance just for trying. At 17, I begged them to co-sign a small student loan for Northwestern. Not even money, just a signature. They said no. Said I needed to learn responsibility. Danny had wrecked 2 cars by then. Sarah had already jetted off to Florence for a photography course our parents helped fund. But I needed to learn responsibility. So I worked nights at Denny's, slept 4 hours a day, built something from nothing. A social media consulting service at first, then a full-scale digital marketing platform. I learned how to code, how to pitch, how to get rejected and keep going anyway. I didn't ask for much. A little credit would have been nice. Maybe an "I'm proud of you" instead of "you're finally doing something with your life." Instead, I became the running gag, the weird one, the workaholic who always showed up late to Thanksgiving because she was probably buried in spreadsheets somewhere. When I got my first 6-figure client, I told no one. When I cleared my student debt in one lump payment, I told no one. When my company landed a partnership with Google, still no one. It felt like if I told them, they'd just find a way to twist it, turn it into another joke, or worse, take credit for it. So I kept quiet. But I watched Sarah host dinner parties in her Brooklyn apartment that I knew she couldn't afford on her freelance photographer salary. Watched Danny post cryptic Instagram stories about grinding and mental health, only to DM me for rent money 2 days later. Watched my parents struggle with their mortgage in Cleveland, but still book anniversary cruises to the Caribbean. And I started helping quietly. An anonymous Venmo here, an untraceable Zelle there. Because despite everything, I still wanted to believe in family. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. That fantasy shattered last Christmas. I offered to fly everyone to Aspen, a ski lodge I'd rented for the week. My mom told me to save my money for something important, then posted on Facebook about how Sarah had surprised them with the most magical family vacation. Sarah had used my money to book that trip. My money, funneled through her account, so she could take credit for the Hamilton family Christmas miracle. That was when I decided, no more behind the scenes. The reunion I just left? That was supposed to be my reveal. A real one. I had it all lined up. A notarized letter offering my parents early retirement, their mortgage wiped clean. A down payment gift for Sarah and her fiancé Trevor, enough for a house in their dream neighborhood. A debt relief package for Danny, plus a job referral at my company if he ever wanted to start fresh. Each document was signed, sealed, printed on expensive cream cardstock. I even picked navy blue folders to match the cabin's rustic decor. That's how far I went. I wanted it to be beautiful, memorable. I imagined the look on my mother's face when she read the letter. The tears, the pride, the slow realization that the daughter she once called directionless had built something big enough to give them all a second chance. I pictured my father standing up in silence, gripping my hand firmly. I imagined Sarah saying, "I misjudged you, Bella." And Danny going, "Damn sis. I had no clue you were killing it like this." I envisioned so many different versions of that moment. What I got instead was a joke printed on a t-shirt with my credit card. And I know what you might be thinking. Maybe it wasn't intentional. Maybe it was just poorly timed humor. Maybe their reactions would have been different if I'd told them beforehand about my success. But here's the truth, on some level, they already knew. They saw the car I drove, a BMW 7 Series, not exactly subtle. They noticed my clothes, my jewelry, the way I never seemed stressed about money anymore. Once, my mom even asked if I was doing okay financially, but in that cautious, probing way people use when they're fishing for information but don't want to seem too interested. They didn't care. Or maybe they did care, and they hated what it revealed about them. I hadn't even reached Nashville before the rumors started to fly. The first call came from my college roommate Emma, someone I hadn't heard from in months. "Hey girl, your sister posted something kind of weird. Said you had a meltdown at the reunion? You okay?" Meltdown. That was the word she used. I opened Instagram and there it was. A picture of the dinner table from earlier, t-shirts spread out like party favors, sweet tea glasses still half full, a German chocolate cake in the middle. The caption read, "Some people just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you even when you self-sabotage. Red heart, #family first, #prayers up." No names, no specifics, but the implication was crystal clear. The comments were flooded with vague sympathy and passive-aggressive support. So sorry, hun. You deserve peace. 2 hearts, you did your best. Some people are just toxic. Family can be messy. Sending hugs. Hugging face. That alone would have been bad enough, but then came the notifications, group chat messages, screenshots, forwarded texts from cousins across 3 states. My Aunt Patricia reached out, asked if I was okay, said my mother had called her sobbing, claiming I'd thrown a tantrum and destroyed important papers in the middle of some kind of breakdown. Danny sent me a message directly, "Dude, you really need help. You embarrassed all of us. We tried to include you and you made it a scene. Real classy, Bella. Include me, right?" I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the original documents to my attorney in Chicago, asked him to timestamp the email, and copied my assistant, Morgan. 5 minutes later, she responded, "Would you like me to push the Entrepreneur magazine feature to this weekend? I can attach the scanned pages as proof." Yes. That. Because here's the thing, I had options. I had proof. I had receipts going back 7 years. They only had a story, a flimsy one at that. But the louder they repeated it, the more damage it could cause. If the Hamilton family was skilled at one thing, it was rewriting history fast. But not this time. This time, I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. I had let them shape my story for too long. Now it was my turn. I started by sharing the Entrepreneur link quietly on LinkedIn. No tags, no commentary, just the article, the underdog founder who secretly funded her family's life for a decade, and then cut ties. Inside were photos of the documents I'd scanned and signed, the same ones I'd torn up at the reunion. The article mentioned my company's valuation, north of $15 million. It mentioned the anonymous donations traced back to shell accounts I'd created. The mortgage payments, the college funds, the random windfalls that had kept the Hamilton family afloat for years. And it mentioned, briefly but clearly, why I'd walked away. Not with bitterness, with clarity. Within hours, my inbox exploded. First came the congratulations from business contacts who'd had no idea about my family situation. Then the apologies from people who'd believed Sarah's Instagram narrative. Then the panic, from the Hamiltons themselves. A voicemail from Sarah, her voice shaky, "Bella, why would you make this public? You're humiliating us. This is our private business." A text from Danny, "Wow. Real mature. Hope you feel good about ruining the family name." Then my mom, "We need to talk. You misunderstood the joke. We were just having fun." Misunderstood a joke. It was almost funny, the way they were doubling down. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because the story was gaining traction, and the spotlight I'd never wanted was about to get a lot brighter. A finance YouTuber picked it up, then a business podcast, then a whole segment on a morning show. Comments flooded in from people who recognized humiliation when they saw it, especially when it wore a smile and called itself family. Danny tried to clap back online, posted a long Twitter thread about me being mentally unstable and twisting facts for sympathy. Someone responded with a screenshot of the debt relief contract I'd written for him, annotated with dates and payment receipts. Sarah attempted damage control, claiming I'd always been jealous and looking for reasons to feel victimized. Someone else found an old Facebook post where she joked about being the favorite child, while tagging a restaurant bill I'd secretly paid. A business influencer I didn't even know shared the Entrepreneur article with the caption, "Let this be a reminder, not every black sheep is lost. Some are just done with wolves in family clothing." They thought they could smear me, discredit me, make me look unhinged. Instead, they ended up exposed. Their own social media histories became evidence against them. Every joke, every dismissive comment, every time they'd taken credit for something I'd quietly funded, it all surfaced. And still, I hadn't said a word publicly. Not once. Because I didn't have to. I had something better than a rebuttal. I had documentation, and now I had the world watching. You'd think after the article, after the messages, after the public unraveling of their favorite story, they'd back off. They didn't. If anything, they doubled down harder. Danny posted a Facebook rant claiming I had a history of being dramatic and always felt left out, even when they tried their best. He shared childhood photos, trying to paint himself as the caring older brother and me as the difficult sister. Sarah started calling extended family members, telling them I wasn't well, that success had gone to my head, that I'd cut ties not because of a t-shirt but because I was always looking for a reason to leave. My parents stayed quiet publicly, but I knew they were making their rounds too, framing it as a misunderstanding, a sad situation. She just took things the wrong way. I watched them try to rebuild their version of events, but this time it wasn't sticking. Because the people they were talking to? A lot of them had already reached out to me privately. A cousin who said she'd always noticed how I was treated differently. A family friend who remembered hearing my mom call me a late bloomer while bragging about Danny's unpaid internship at a startup that, ironically, I now had business connections with. The part that hit hardest wasn't their spin attempts. It was the realization that I'd spent so long hoping they'd change, I didn't notice how much I had. I was no longer the girl trying to earn a seat at their table. I had my own table now. And the silence that followed that realization? It was the first time I'd felt genuine peace in years. They sent a letter, not an email, an actual letter, probably because they thought it felt more sincere. It wasn't an apology. Not really. Just carefully worded damage control. We're still your family, and we love you, and we hope you can move past this. Move past it. Like it was a phase. Like I'd gotten offended and stormed off and needed to come back once I'd cooled down. I didn't reply. A week later, they sent another. This one was longer, more emotional. It talked about things they'd done for me when I was younger, meals, rides, a roof over my head, like that made up for everything else. They never mentioned the money, or the years of jokes, or how quick they were to publicly smear me when I finally said no. Then, out of nowhere, Danny posted an old photo of us from when we were kids at Cedar Point Amusement Park. He captioned it, "Miss my sister. Still love her. Always will. #family. I got tagged a dozen times. People wanted a reaction. But the only people I'd ever owed anything to were the ones who'd stuck around when I had nothing. And none of them were wearing coordinated t-shirts. So I stayed quiet. And in that silence, things kept shifting. Sarah's engagement fell through. Trevor had apparently been following the whole story online and decided he couldn't handle the drama. She'd been clinging hard to the "we're victims of cancel culture" narrative, and he wasn't buying it. Danny lost a speaking opportunity at some minor tech conference he'd lined up. Someone had forwarded the full Entrepreneur article to the organizers, along with screenshots of his old posts where he joked that I never followed through on anything. As for my parents, they tried to refinance their house to consolidate some debt. It didn't work out. A contact of mine in banking mentioned they'd been flagged for inconsistent income documentation, probably because I'd stopped the monthly transfers I'd been sending for 3 years. That part? That was me. And I wasn't sorry. I started living. Not to get revenge, just finally freely. I traveled without constantly checking my phone. I made business decisions without wondering if they'd finally be impressed. I built new partnerships because I wanted to, not to win anyone's approval. My company expanded into 3 new markets. I spoke at conferences, real ones, not the kind Danny had been chasing. I even started dating again, something I'd put on hold because I'd been too busy funding other people's dreams. Then one evening, about 6 months later, I got a message from someone I didn't recognize, a stranger who'd seen the article. Just a single line, "Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away." That one stayed with me. Not because I craved validation, but because it reminded me that walking away wasn't an act of selfishness. It was self-preservation. It was survival. I'd never been angry that they didn't love me the way I needed. I was angry that they'd pretended they did while tearing me down every time I tried to stand tall. That night, I opened a box I'd stored in my apartment's walk-in closet. Inside were copies of the original documents, the ones I'd torn to shreds at the reunion. I ran my fingers over them. Premium cardstock, cream-colored, still sharp at the edges where I'd ripped the first set in half. It didn't feel like loss anymore. It felt like closure. I don't know where they are now. I don't check their social media. Sometimes people send me updates, but I delete them before reading to the end. Not out of apathy, but because the version of me who craved their approval doesn't exist anymore. She's gone. And she's not coming back. 2 years later. It's been a while since I've thought about that reunion, but something happened recently that brought it all back. I got invited to a wedding, not family thankfully, but a business partner who'd become a real friend. At the reception in downtown Chicago, someone introduced me to their cousin from Wisconsin. She smiled, shook my hand, and said, "Wait, are you the t-shirt girl? From that article?" I laughed. Really laughed. "Yeah," I said. "That's me." She told me she'd cut ties with her own toxic family after reading my story. Said it gave her the courage to choose herself for the first time in 30 years. I didn't know what to say then. Still don't, honestly. But it stuck with me because for the longest time, I'd believed walking away meant defeat. Meant surrender. Meant failure. But in reality, it was the first time I'd ever truly stood up for myself. Sometimes I wonder if they still talk about me. If they tell the story differently now. If they miss me, or just miss the version of me they could control. I haven't reached out, and they haven't either. Not for a long time. Maybe that says everything. Did I go too far, or not far enough? Let me know in the comments below.